At 2:47 in the morning, on a quiet street in Buckhead, Atlanta, a 26-year-old man named Trey Mitchell climbed through a window that would change the entire direction of his life. He expected to find jewelry, cash, maybe electronics he could flip by sunrise. What he found instead was a woman sitting alone on her kitchen floor, barefoot, mascara running down her face, holding a bottle of pills in one hand and a handwritten letter in the other. She looked up at him. He looked down at her. And in that single moment, two strangers who had absolutely no business being in the same room together locked eyes, and something shifted that neither of them could explain. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a situation thinking you knew exactly what was going to happen, only to realize that life had a completely different plan for you? That is exactly what happened here. And this story, every single part of it, is one you will not forget. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. To understand how Trey ended up climbing through that window, you have to understand where he came from. Trey Mitchell grew up in Buckhead, on the west side of Atlanta, in a two-bedroom apartment with his mother Gwen and his younger brother Jordan. Gwen worked double shifts at a hotel downtown doing housekeeping 6 days a week. She was the kind of woman who laid out her uniform every night, packed her lunch in the same brown paper bag, and never once complained about being tired even though everyone around her could see it in her eyes. She raised those boys by herself after their father left when Trey was 9 years old. Just walked out one Tuesday afternoon, said he was going to get gas, and never came back. No phone call. No letter. No explanation. Trey remembers standing at the window that evening watching the street, waiting for headlights that never came. He stood there for 3 hours until his mother gently pulled him away and said, "Baby, some people leave. That is not your fault, and it is not your weight to carry." But he carried it anyway. Trey was smart. His teachers said it. His counselors said it. He had the kind of mind that could take things apart and put them back together, whether it was a broken radio or a math problem. But smart does not pay rent. Smart does not keep the lights on when the power bill is 3 months behind. By the time Trey was 16, he started running with a group of older guys in the neighborhood. They were not gang members in the traditional sense, but they were not choir boys either. They broke into cars. They hit houses in nicer neighborhoods when the owners were on vacation. Trey was good at it because he was quiet, observant, and patient. He could sit outside a house for 2 hours watching the pattern of lights turning on and off before he ever made a move. He told himself it was temporary. He told himself he would stop once his mother was stable, once Jordan had what he needed for school, once things got a little easier. But things never got easier, and temporary became years. By the time he was 26, Trey had been arrested twice. Once for petty theft when he was 19, and once for breaking and entering when he was 23. He did 14 months at a county facility for the second charge. When he came home, Gwen hugged him at the door and said, "I prayed every single night for you. Please do not make me do that again." And Trey meant it when he said he was done. He got a job at a warehouse in Conyers, stacking pallets for $11 an hour. He showed up on time, kept his head down, and for 8 months he stayed clean. Then the warehouse cut his hours in half because of a contract they lost. Then Jordan needed money for a school trip. Then the car broke down. Then the rent was late. And just like that, Trey found himself standing outside a house in Buckhead at 2 in the morning, wearing black gloves, telling himself this was the last time. How many of you have ever made a promise to yourself that you truly believed you would keep, only to find yourself right back where you started? That cycle, that pull between who you want to be and what your circumstances demand, is something millions of people understand but rarely talk about. The house belonged to a woman named Nicole Preston. From the outside, Nicole's life looked like something out of a magazine. She was 29 years old, a graduate of Spelman College, and the only daughter of Harold and Vivian Preston, who built one of the most successful black-owned commercial real estate firms in the Southeast. The house in Buckhead was a gift from her parents when she turned 25. Nicole drove a white Mercedes, wore clothes that still had tags on them hanging in her closet, and had a savings account with more money in it than most people will see in a lifetime. From the outside, there was nothing missing. From the inside, everything was falling apart. Nicole had been battling depression since college. It started during her junior year at Spelman, quietly at first, like a low hum in the background that she could ignore if she stayed busy enough. She kept her grades up. She joined organizations. She smiled in every photo. But behind closed doors, she would sit on the edge of her bed and feel absolutely nothing. Not sadness exactly, but an emptiness so heavy it felt like it had weight. She went to a therapist once during her senior year, a kind woman named Dr. Ware who told her that what she was feeling was valid and treatable. Nicole went to 3 sessions and then stopped going because she convinced herself she could handle it alone. That is something a lot of people do. They convince themselves that needing help is the same as being weak, and they carry the weight until their legs give out. After college, things got worse. Nicole went to work for her father's company, not because she wanted to but because it was expected. She sat in meetings she did not care about, approved deals that meant nothing to her, and smiled at people who only valued her because of her last name. She started dating a man named Darnell in 2019. He was charming, well-dressed, came from a good family, and her parents adored him. But Darnell had a way of making Nicole feel small. He never raised his voice, never called her a name, but he had this quiet way of dismissing everything she said, every feeling she expressed, every concern she raised. When she told him she was struggling, he said, "Struggling with what? You have everything." And that sentence, those 6 words, made her feel more alone than she had ever felt in her life. They broke up in early 2021, and Nicole barely reacted. She did not cry. She did not call her friends. She just sat in her living room and stared at the wall for 4 hours. By the fall of 2022, Nicole had quietly withdrawn from almost everyone in her life. She stopped answering calls from her mother. She stopped going to Sunday dinners. She stopped posting on social media. Her best friend Keisha called her 17 times in 1 week and got no response. When Keisha finally drove over and knocked on the door, Nicole opened it, smiled, and said, "I am fine, I have just been busy." She was not fine. She had not been fine for a very long time. And on the night of November 14, 2022, Nicole Preston sat down on her kitchen floor with a bottle of prescription sleeping pills and a letter she had spent 2 days writing. The letter was addressed to her mother. It started with the words, "Mama, please do not blame yourself." Think about that for a moment. Think about someone you love sitting alone in a beautiful house, surrounded by everything money can buy, writing a letter that starts with those words. Wealth does not protect you from pain. Success does not silence the voice in your head that tells you the world would be better off without you. And loneliness does not care how many rooms your house has. That is the scene Trey walked into. He had come in through a side window on the first floor, one that had a faulty latch he noticed during his earlier surveillance. He moved through the dark hallway carefully, his sneakers barely making a sound on the hardwood floor. He could smell lavender, like someone had lit a candle earlier that evening. The house was silent except for the low hum of a refrigerator. He turned the corner into the kitchen, expecting it to be empty, and that is when he saw her. Nicole was sitting on the tile floor with her back against the island, her knees pulled up to her chest. The pill bottle was open in her right hand. The letter was folded on the floor beside her. She had been crying, but she was not crying anymore. Her face had this expression that Trey would later describe as someone who had already made peace with a decision. She looked up at him, and for a long second, neither of them moved. Now imagine this. You are in someone's home illegally. You are there to take things that do not belong to you. And you find a woman on the edge of ending her life. What do? Do you run? Do you pretend you did not see it? Or do you stay? Trey stayed. He does not fully understand why even now, but he stayed. He slowly pulled off his gloves and put them in his pocket. He did not reach for her. He did not lunge toward the pills. He just stood there and said the first thing that came to his mind. "Hey. Are you okay?" Nicole stared at him. Her voice was flat when she spoke. "You are robbing me." Trey swallowed. "Yeah. I was." Nicole looked down at the pills in her hand, then back up at him. Well, you picked a bad night. There was something about the way she said it, not angry, not scared, just tired, that made Trey's chest tighten. He had been in a lot of strange situations in his life, but nothing like this. He slowly lowered himself to the floor, keeping a few feet of distance between them, and sat down with his back against the opposite cabinet. The kitchen was dim, just the light above the stove casting a yellow glow across the room. For almost a full minute, they just sat there in silence. Then Trey spoke again. What is in the bottle? Nicole did not answer at first. She just turned it slowly in her hand, reading the label like she was seeing it for the first time. Then she said, enough. Trey felt something cold move through his body. He recognized that word. Not from personal experience, but from a cousin named Andre who used the same word 3 days before he was found unresponsive in his apartment in 2018. Andre did not make it. Trey was not going to let that happen again. He did not grab the bottle. He did not lecture her. He did not say any of the things people usually say, like, you have so much to live for, or, think about your family. Instead, he said something that surprised even himself. I was not supposed to be here tonight. I almost did not come. My mama would be heartbroken if she knew I was doing this again. I promised her I would stop. Nicole looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. Then why are you here? Trey shrugged. Because I do not know how to be anything else. Because every time I try to do right, something pulls me back. And I keep telling myself next time will be different, but it never is. Nicole's eyes softened. Not because she felt sorry for him, but because she recognized something in what he said. That feeling of being trapped in a cycle you cannot escape. That exhaustion of fighting a battle no one else can see. She whispered, I know exactly what that feels like. They talked for 3 hours. Not about anything dramatic or profound at first. Trey told her about growing up in Buckhead, about his mother, about Jordan, about the warehouse job he lost. Nicole told him about Spellman, about working for her father, about Darnell, about the weight she had been carrying for years. She told him things she had never told anyone, not her therapist, not Keisha, not her mother. She told him that the worst part of depression is not the sadness. It is the numbness. It is waking up every morning and feeling absolutely nothing and wondering if today is the day you simply stop trying. Trey listened. He did not interrupt. He did not try to fix it. He just listened. And somewhere around 5 in the morning, when the first pale light started coming through the kitchen window, Nicole set the pill bottle down on the floor between them and slid it gently toward him. Take these with you when you leave, she said. Trey picked up the bottle, put it in his jacket pocket, and nodded. He left through the same window he came in. He did not take a single thing from that house. Not a watch, not a necklace, not a dollar. He walked 6 blocks to where he had parked his car, sat in the driver's seat, and cried for 20 minutes. He could not remember the last time he had cried. He drove home, put the pill bottle in a bag, and threw it in a dumpster behind a gas station on Fulton Industrial. Then he went inside, sat on the edge of his bed, and stared at the wall until the sun came up. He could not stop thinking about her. Not in a romantic way, not yet. But in the way you think about someone whose pain felt so familiar it scared you. He kept replaying her voice in his head. I know exactly what that feels like. And he kept asking himself the same question over and over. What if he had not gone to that house? What if he had picked a different one? What would have happened to her? 3 days later, Trey did something he had never done before. He went back to that house. Not to rob it. Not to take anything. He went back because he could not stop thinking about whether she was still alive. He drove to Buckhead in the middle of the afternoon, parked 2 streets away, and walked to her house like a regular person. He stood at the front door for a full minute before he knocked. When Nicole opened the door, she was wearing sweatpants and a Spellman hoodie. Her hair was pulled back. She had no makeup on. She looked exhausted. But she was alive. When she saw him, she did not scream. She did not call the police. She just stood there and said, I did not think you would come back." Trey said, "I did not think so either." She stepped aside and let him in. "Let me pause here and ask you something. What would you have done if you were Nicole? A stranger broke into your house, found you at your lowest moment, and then came back 3 days later to check on you. Would you have let him in? Would you have trusted him? Or would you have shut the door?" There is no right answer. But what Nicole did in that moment tells you everything about where she was emotionally. She was so isolated, so disconnected from everyone in her life, that a stranger who listened to her for 3 hours on a kitchen floor felt safer than the people who were supposed to love her. That is not a reflection of her family or friends being bad people. It is a reflection of how depression builds walls so thick that even the people closest to you cannot get through. Trey started coming by once a week, then twice, then almost every day. They would sit in her living room, or on the back patio, and just talk. Sometimes for 20 minutes, sometimes for hours. He told her about Andre, about how the family never saw it coming, about the guilt he still carried for not checking on his cousin more often. Nicole told him about Dr. Ware, the therapist she stopped seeing years ago. Trey asked her a simple question. "Why did you stop going?" Nicole thought about it for a long time and then said, "Because I was afraid that if I started being honest about how I felt, I would not be able to stop. And I did not know what would be left of me after that." Trey looked at her and said, "Maybe what is left is the real you. And maybe the real you is enough." 2 weeks after that conversation, Nicole called Dr. Ware's office. The receptionist said Dr. Ware had moved to a new practice but they could refer her to someone else. Nicole took the referral. She started seeing a therapist named Dr. Coleman, a black woman in her 50s who had a calm voice and a way of asking questions that made Nicole feel like it was safe to be honest. The first 3 sessions were hard. Nicole cried through most of them. But she kept going. Every Tuesday at 10 a.m., she showed up. And every Tuesday evening, she would text Trey 2 words. "I went." And he would text back, "Proud of you." Now here is where the story takes a turn that neither of them expected. Over the course of those weeks and months, something changed between Trey and Nicole. It was not sudden. It was not dramatic. It was slow and quiet, like the way the sky changes color right before sunrise. Trey started noticing things. The way Nicole would tilt her head when she was thinking. The way she laughed, really laughed, for the first time about 6 weeks after they met, at something stupid he said about trying to cook oxtails and nearly setting his kitchen on fire. It was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. Nicole started noticing things too. The way Trey always asked about her day before talking about his own. The way he remembered small details she mentioned weeks earlier, like the fact that her favorite flower was gardenias, or that she used to write poetry in college. One afternoon in January, they were sitting on her couch watching a movie, and Nicole rested her head on his shoulder without thinking about it. Trey did not move. He barely breathed. He just let it happen. And they stayed like that until the credits rolled. But Trey was carrying his own weight. He had not told Nicole everything about his past. She knew he was the man who climbed through her window. She accepted that. But she did not know about the second arrest, the 14 months he served, or the fact that he still owed money to a man named Quentin who had fronted him cash for a job Trey never completed before that night in Buckhead. Quentin was not a violent man, but he was persistent. He started calling Trey in December, asking when he was going to settle up. Trey kept saying he would handle it. But the truth was, he did not have the money, and he was not willing to go back to that life to get it. He was terrified that his past was going to catch up with him and destroy the one good thing that had happened to him. He lay awake at night thinking about it, staring at the ceiling, his jaw tight, his mind racing. One evening in February, Nicole asked him directly. "Trey, what is wrong? And do not tell me nothing because I can see it." He sat there for a long time, rubbing his hands together, looking at the floor. Then he told her everything. The arrests. The time he served. Quentin. The money he owed. The fear that he was one phone call away from being pulled back into a world he was trying to leave behind. He told her he understood if she wanted him to leave and not come back. Nicole listened to every word. Then she said something that broke him open. "You sat on my kitchen floor at 3 in the morning and did not judge me. You think I am going to judge you now?" Trey put his face in his hands, and for the second time since that night, he cried. Nicole moved closer and put her arms around him. She held him like that for a long time, and neither of them said a word. Sometimes words are not what people need. Sometimes they just need someone to stay. Nicole paid off Trey's debt to Quentin. It was $4,000. For her, it was nothing. For Trey, it was everything. But it was not the money that mattered. It was the fact that she did it without hesitation, without making him feel small, without holding it over his head. She simply said, "That chapter is closed now. What matters is what happens next." Trey promised her, and more importantly he promised himself, that he would never go back. He enrolled in a training program for HVAC technicians through a workforce development center in East Point. It was a 6-month program, 3 nights a week, and it was hard. He was the oldest person in his class. He struggled with some of the technical material. But he showed up every single session because every time he thought about quitting, he thought about Nicole sitting on that kitchen floor, and he thought about the fact that they both deserved better than the lives they had been living. By spring of 2023, something remarkable had happened. 2 people who met under the most unlikely and desperate circumstances had built something real. Trey finished his HVAC training and got hired by a company in Marietta. It was not glamorous work, but it was honest, and the first time he cashed a paycheck that he earned without looking over his shoulder, he sat in his car in the parking lot and just held it in his hands for 5 minutes. Nicole was still seeing Dr. Coleman every week. She had started writing again, not poetry this time but journal entries, long honest pages about her childhood, her father's expectations, her relationship with Darnell, and the night she almost ended her life. Dr. Coleman encouraged her to consider sharing her story one day. Nicole was not ready for that yet. But the fact that she could even imagine a future where she might be ready was a kind of healing in itself. Trey told his mother about Nicole in April. He did not tell her how they met. He was not ready for that. He just said he met someone, and she was good, and she made him want to be better. Gwen looked at her son for a long moment, studying his face the way only a mother can, and then she smiled. "Bring her to Sunday dinner," she said. Trey brought Nicole the following week. She was nervous. She changed her outfit 3 times before they left. When they walked in, Gwen was standing at the stove stirring a pot of greens, and Jordan was sitting at the kitchen table doing homework. Gwen wiped her hands on her apron, walked over to Nicole, and hugged her like she had known her for years. "Thank you," Gwen whispered in her ear. Nicole did not know exactly what she was being thanked for, but she hugged Gwen back and said, "Thank you for raising him." That dinner lasted 4 hours. They ate collard greens, baked chicken, cornbread, and sweet potato pie. Jordan talked about wanting to go to Morehouse. Gwen told stories about Trey as a little boy, how he used to take apart every appliance in the house. Trey pretended to be embarrassed but he was smiling the entire time. Nicole laughed more that evening than she had in years. On the drive home, she reached over and took Trey's hand. "Your family is beautiful," she said. Trey squeezed her hand. "You are part of it now." In June, Nicole told her own mother about Trey. Vivian Preston was cautious. She asked questions. "Where is he from? What does he do? How did you meet?" Nicole answered honestly about his job, about his character, about the way he treated her. She was not honest about how they met. She was not ready for that conversation. Vivian reserved judgment but agreed to meet him. That dinner was different from Gwen's kitchen. It was at a restaurant in Midtown, white tablecloths, 3 forks at each setting. Trey wore slacks and a button-down shirt Nicole helped him pick out. He was nervous but he did not show it. He shook Harold's hand firmly, pulled out Vivian's chair, and answered every question they asked with respect and honesty. At the end of the dinner, Harold said, "You seem like a man who knows what hard work looks like." Trey nodded. Yes sir, I do. On the way home, Nicole asked him how he felt. Trey exhaled slowly and said, like I just survived something. They both laughed, and for a moment everything felt simple and good. But life has a way of testing you right when you think you have found your footing. In August of 2023, Trey got a call from a number he did not recognize. It was a man named Devin, someone he used to run with years ago. Devin had heard through mutual contacts that Trey was doing well, and he wanted Trey's help with one more job. A house in Sandy Springs. Easy in, easy out. Trey's stomach dropped. I am done with that, he said. Devin laughed. Come on, Trey. One more. For old time's sake. Trey hung up. He sat in his truck outside of a job site with his hands gripping the steering wheel, his knuckles tight. The old pull was there. Not because he wanted the money, but because part of him still believed that was who he really was. That everything else, the HVAC job, Nicole, Sunday dinners with his mother, was just a costume he was wearing over the person underneath. He called Nicole. He did not tell her what Devin said. He just said, "Can I come over tonight? I just need to not be alone right now." Nicole said, "Come now." When he got there, she did not ask questions. She made him a plate of food, sat next to him on the couch, and put on a movie. Halfway through, Trey said, quietly, almost to himself, "I am not going back." Nicole looked at him. "I know you are not." The way she said it, with complete certainty, like it was a fact and not a hope, made him believe it too. September came, and with it, the 1-year mark since the night they met. Neither of them planned to acknowledge it. But on the evening of November 14, 2023, exactly 1 year after Trey climbed through that window, Nicole asked him to come over. When he arrived, the kitchen light was on. She was sitting on the floor, in the same spot where he found her that night. But this time there were no pills. No letter. There were 2 cups of tea and a small cake from a bakery on Peachtree. Trey stood in the doorway and felt his throat tighten. Nicole looked up at him with tears in her eyes, but she was smiling. 1 year ago, I was going to end my life on this floor, she said. And then you showed up. A whole burglar. And you sat down and asked me if I was okay. Trey laughed through the lump in his throat. I did not have a plan. Nicole shook her head. You did not need one. You just needed to stay. And you did. Trey sat down beside her, right there on the kitchen floor, and they ate cake and drank tea until midnight. Before they stood up, Nicole said, I want to tell our story one day. All of it. How we really met. I want people to know that help can come from the most unexpected places. That you do not have to have your life together to save someone else's. That sometimes the person who needs rescuing is also the person who rescues you. Trey was quiet for a moment. Then he said, when you are ready, I will be right there with you. Now I want to ask you something. Really think about this. How many times have you looked at someone and assumed you knew their story? How many times have you seen a person in a nice car, in a big house, with a perfect smile, and thought they had it all figured out? And how many times have you looked at someone on the other side, someone who made mistakes, someone who took a wrong path, and decided they were not worth believing in? This story is a reminder that none of us are just one thing. Nicole was not just a rich girl with a perfect life. Trey was not just a criminal. They were 2 broken people who found each other at the exact right moment, and instead of running from each other's pain, they sat down in it together. That is not a fairy tale. That is what love actually looks like when you strip away everything that does not matter. As of early 2024, Trey is a licensed HVAC technician working full-time. He moved out of his old apartment and into a place in College Park, closer to his mother. He has not committed a crime in over a year. He goes to Sunday dinner at Gwen's house every week without fail. Jordan got accepted to Morehouse on a partial scholarship, and Trey paid for the rest out of his own pocket. Every dollar earned honestly. Nicole continues to see Dr. Coleman. She left her father's company and started a non-profit focused on mental health awareness in the Black community, specifically targeting high-achieving women who feel pressured to perform perfection while silently suffering. She named the organization, Still Here. If that does not move you, I do not know what will. She and Trey are still together. They are not married yet. They are not in a rush. They are building something slowly, intentionally, on a foundation that started in the most improbable way imaginable. Trey eventually told his mother the truth about how he and Nicole met. He sat at Gwen's kitchen table one Sunday afternoon after everyone else had left and told her everything. The break-in. The pills. The letter. The 3 hours on the kitchen floor. Gwen listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she reached across the table, took his hands, and said, "God does not make mistakes, baby. He put you in that house for a reason. And it was not to take something. It was to give something." Trey nodded. He could not speak. Gwen squeezed his hands and said, "Now you make sure you spend the rest of your life being worthy of that moment." That is a mother's love right there. Not excusing what he did, but recognizing the grace in what came from it. And Trey carries those words with him every single day. Nicole also told her parents the full story eventually. It was harder. Vivian cried for an hour. Harold left the room and did not come back for 20 minutes. When he returned, his eyes were red, and he sat down next to his daughter and said, "Why did you not come to us?" Nicole held his hand and said, "Because I did not know how. I did not have the words. And I was afraid that if I told you, you would look at me differently." Harold shook his head. "You are my daughter. Nothing you could ever say would change the way I look at you. Nothing." That was the moment Nicole realized that the walls she had built were not protecting her. They were trapping her. And one by one, she started taking them down. If you are watching this right now and you are going through something, whether it is depression, financial stress, a past you cannot escape, or a feeling that nobody would care if you disappeared, I need you to hear this. You matter. Your presence on this earth matters. The fact that you are watching this video right now means you are still here, and still here is enough. Trey was not a hero. He was a flawed man who made a choice to sit down instead of run away. Nicole was not weak. She was a strong woman who had been fighting a silent war for years and finally ran out of ammunition. Their story is proof that redemption is real, that connection can happen in the darkest moments, and that sometimes the person who saves your life is the last person you would ever expect. If you or someone you know is struggling with thoughts of suicide, please reach out to the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by calling or texting 988. You do not have to go through this alone. What do you think about Trey and Nicole's story? What part hit you the hardest? Drop it in the comments below because I read every single one of them. And if this story made you feel something, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. You never know what someone is going through behind closed doors. Thank you for watching until the very end. I will see you in the next one.